community gathering vibe, I thought, what if we did some shade trees and some small tables with chessboards on top? Multi-generational, not seasonal, much less money, doesn't require much upkeep. So that's my small proposal. And also I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could do solar panels on the top of the roofs sheltering the farmers market area? Because why not encourage and model sustainable energy production? So thank you all very much. Congrats on finishing Freewheel.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Jane. Okay, that moves us to item 6, items removed from the consent docket. We removed item G.
That was the OSU agreement, or the exchange agreement for the fire station and the GE property. And my request is that if you chose to approve this, that you do so contingent upon receipt of the surveys and verification of those locations by staff.
Okay. Motion?
Can I go back for a minute? I forgot someone on public comment.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. Mr. Hinton, I apologize. Where are you? There. I just didn't see it. It was, can I say it was stuck to the back of another paper? We have Bill Hinton.
I'm Bill Hinton, and I'm here on behalf of Russ Tubner, who couldn't be here, and he's asked me to read this letter to y'all. It's a nice letter. He says, I'm out of state on business, and I sincerely regret not being able to attend tonight's meeting in person. However, I didn't want to miss the opportunity to publicly convey my support and appreciation for your continued work on the Block 34 project. I reviewed the draft architectural renderings by Mr. Gary Sparks, and I'm very encouraged by what I see. Functionally, these renderings seem to contain all of the high priority elements that the council and community stakeholders have identified. And that is how I evaluated this initial set of renderings, as an expression of the functional elements to be included and the relative space to be allocated to those elements. In this regard, I want to express my full support for these renderings. No doubt matters of architectural style will also be considered in due time. Personally, I would like to see the overall style to be a bit more modern, artistic, and fluid, but that's just one person's opinion. Once there is agreement on the functional elements, I'm confident you can create a process to address the overall style of the space with Mr. Sparks. Pardon me. In this regard, I encourage you to enlist the involvement of Ms. Victoria Berry, who is director of the OSU Museum of Art, as soon as possible. I say this for two reasons. First, the OSU Museum of Art is one of our crown jewels downtown, and given that its access across the street, it would be a tragedy not to create some thematic consistency between the Museum of Art and Block 34. My hope is that they flow together as much as possible. The second reason to enlist Ms. Berry's involvement is that she has experience with the category of grants offered by the National Endowment of the Arts, referred to as placemaking grants. This grant program seems to be an excellent fit for the Block 34 project, and assuming we do formulate such a grant application, we would certainly want the stated goals of an application to be in harmony with and reinforced by the architectural style of Block 34. In summary, thank you again for your continued efforts to transform Block 34 into Stillwater's social, cultural, and artistic hub. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hinton. Once again, I apologize for calling. Okay, now Mr. Dorman, we've already heard about item G.
We just need a motion, and again, our request is that that motion contain that contingency.
Is there a motion on item G?
Yes.
I will move to allow the mayor to sign the agreements once the specifics of the surveys and the
Jardo Road property.
yes, once the specifics of the surveys are in for the Jardo Road property.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second for item G. Please vote. And with a vote of 5-0, item G G is also approved. That brings us to public hearings. Item A, receive public comment regarding a request for a map amendment from Stillwater Medical Center to rezone properties addressed at 1411 West 7th Avenue, 1404 through 1424 West 8th Avenue, 712 through 720 South Stanley Street, and 707 through 715 South Gray Street from O Office and RSS Residential Small Lot Single Family to the P Public District CC-17-99. Mr. Dorman, did we have good notice on this item?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. McNichol.
Presenting that report tonight will be Paula Dennison, Director of Development Services.
Good evening. I do have a request before you this evening for a map amendment that's in the 700 block between Gray and Stanley Streets, and this is on behalf of Stillwater Medical Center. As you can see, the property is outlined here. You have Gray to the west, Stanley to the east, 8th to the south, and 7th to the north. The hospital proper is immediately across the street of 7th Avenue. The property has currently 2 zonings on it. The purple is office zoning, and the gold or yellow is single-family, small lot residential. The areas in blue that surround this are zoned public, and again, that's where the hospital proper is located. This is a street view from 8th and Stanley looking northwest. There are currently some houses on the properties. Also a street view of 7th and Gray looking southeast. And this is a medical use that is existing along with the parking lot for that use. Planning Commission did hear this, and they'll have a recommendation here in a moment. Any questions? They have not turned in any development plans. They have talked to us about what they would like to do, but overall, just an expansion of the hospital and medical uses that are adjoining to the north of 7th Avenue. Be happy to answer any questions that any of you may have.
Anybody? Any questions?
Not right now.
Okay. All right. We have one speaker for this. At this time, I will open the public hearing, and we have Stephen Gose.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. Stephen Gose, Gose and Associates, 113 East 8th, here on behalf of the applicant to answer any questions. We are proposing a 160-space parking lot. Those plans have been submitted. We got comments this morning from staff that we're working through, a few landscape additions, and some drainage questions. So that's pretty much it, but just here to answer any questions. And it is to support the expansion going on at the hospital. So.
Questions? Okay, at this time, I will close the public hearing and ask for Ms. Dennison to come back. And is there a recommendation?
Yes, the Planning Commission does send a recommendation of approval of this map amendment request with a 4-0 vote.
Councilors, are there questions for staff? Is there a motion on the recommendation?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve CC-17-99. Please vote. And with a vote of 4-1, CC-17-99 is approved. That brings us to item B, receive public comment regarding a request from Bobby and Joyce Douglas for a specific use permit for food services in the office district for property at 823 West 11th Avenue. This is continued from April 17th, and it is CC-17-101. Mr. Dorman, did we have good notice on this item?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. McNichol.
Again, Paula Dennison will provide that information.
Thank you. This is a specific use permit request. Again, it is continued from April 17th. The reason for the continuation is because there was recently a rezoning request that was filed prior to the 12th Avenue Master Plan consideration. So when Mr. Douglas's rezoning request came before the City Council, it was included in that initial evaluation for that 12th Avenue Neighborhood Plan. Therefore, the rezoning was postponed. Subsequently, the specific use has been postponed as well. So tonight, we're going to hear the specific use because the second reading of the ordinance to rezone this property to office is actually on tonight's agenda also. So the specific use. This is the property that is outlined in the bold purple line. Currently, it is zoned RSS, single-family, small lot residential, and will be until the second reading tonight and the publication of the ordinance. Surrounded on the northeast and south are public zoning. To the west, immediately across Washington Street, is office zoning. And the request is to take his individual parcel to the office zoning district. This is a street view looking southeast. His house, there is a storage building, and if you can see, that's his cooker. There has been a food service conducted on this property for a number of decades, not just years, but decades. And Mr. Douglas is here in the audience this evening, and he may even want to expand on how long he has been providing food service to the community. The proposal is for the storage building to be removed, as is shown in this site plan. The area that I am circling around here at the northeast part of the property, that would be the concrete pad that would be left after the storage building is removed. And once removed, he is anticipating, if you can see this little oblong piece here, putting a food service trailer on the property in order to have the food service trailer and then utilize the remainder of the concrete pad with a little expansion for outdoor seating. One of the requests that the Planning Commission considered, and it is allowed by code, but he wanted to come out and make it known that he was asking to utilize some of the public parking spaces on the city's parkland immediately adjacent over here on the east side of the property. His food service use would require 2.x number of parking spaces. The code does allow those spaces to be provided through adjacent public parking. So that's one of the reasons that you see no additional parking spaces on his site plan. Again, the food trailer. I will be happy to answer any questions that any of you may have.
Counselors, any questions?
Tell me how specific the specific use permit is. Like what, is it just for this trailer? Is it for the pad to be used for food service? I mean, if we grant the specific use permit, can he, in 10 years, when it's wildly successful, build a big restaurant on the site? What is allowed and what's not?
Certainly, excellent question. One of the reasons that a site plan and any supporting information is required with the specific use, because it locks that use in based on those conditions. Additional conditions that can be considered, hours of operation, lighting, anything like that. The Planning Commission chose to not include those, but they did include this site plan with the concrete pad area, the outdoor seating, and the food service trailer to be a part of this specific use permit request.
So what happens to those additional considerations that aren't in the, like, hours of service and lighting? Are those just sort of up to
Mr. Douglas and the operation of his food service, yes. Since they were not specifically identified, then as long as it does not cause a nuisance or violate the noise ordinance or any of the other regulations that the city currently has in place.
What are the reconsideration options if this is it ends up being too much or too big or too disruptive, can it come back and have modifications made?
Certainly, it can, at Mr. Douglas's behest or at the city's, it can come back for additional consideration. There is a requirement that the conditions by which a specific use permit is granted are evaluated annually to ensure that those conditions are still being maintained and that they are still valid according to what is occurring on the property. So that will also be looked at on an annual basis.
Thank you.
Yes.
Counselors, other questions? No. Okay. At this time, I will open the public hearing, and we have one speaker, Mr. Douglas.
My name is Bobby Douglas. I live at 823 West East 11th. I first opened up, I came in 1990, and like I was saying, I got a variance from John Wesley to open up the building first. And so I opened up the building. I had gotten laid off my job over there in Tulsa as a tool and die maker for Rockwell International at that time. And I opened up the building, but the problem with the building was carry out and catering. It didn't allow me to have any seating, so I opened it up in the wrong time of the year, October, November. So when you got your food, by the time you get home, your food was cold. But anyway, I've been serving food out of that building, out of my home, since about 92. I have customers here in Stillwater, and also I have customers on my job over in Tulsa that I continue to cook for once a month. But I retired in April of last year, 2016, and so I was wanting to go into this business full time. It's something that I enjoy doing. Some people golf, some people fish, I cook. So and provide a service that's, to me, is sorely needed here, because no good barbecue place here. Appreciate it, thank you.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Douglas. Okay, I will close the public hearing. And Ms. Dennison, is there a recommendation?
Yes, the Plan Commission sends a recommendation of approval on a 5-0 vote.
Okay. Counselors, questions? Is there a motion?
I have a motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Please vote. And with a vote of 5-0, CC-17-101 is approved. That brings, we have 2 C and D are postponed, so that brings us to general orders. Mr. McNichol.
We need a,
You need to actually take action to move those 2 items. You can do them in one motion.
Okay.
The
there a motion?
recommendation would be to move them to July 17th.
Okay. Is there a motion to move item C and D to July 17th?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to move items C and D to July 17th meeting. Please vote. And with a vote of 5-0, that is approved. Now that takes us to general orders. Mr. McNichol.
I will be providing that report, Mayor, and I hope Ms. Ross is still out
She is. I see her.
outside. Maybe she might want to step back in.
I hear Jane.
James may not want to step back in.
Stay out there with her.
We're a full-service organization here. This report is regarding the preliminary drawings that Gary Sparks has supplied for Block 34, and inadvertently, this report was not either in the council's packet nor did it make the internet, but it is there now. and it addresses specifically some of Ms. Ross's comments. As you're aware, Gary Sparks heard about the effort to develop Block 34 and volunteered to provide a concept plan at no charge. He looked at all of the, and there is a ton of information on this subject. He looked at all of the past studies regarding Block 34, and he wanted to emphasize some things about these particular drawings. First, they are a draft. They are presented with the following information. Mr. Sparks was unclear if the plan should be situated with definite thought of closing Duncan. If closing Duncan between 8th and 9th is to be part of the plan, the concept can be expanded to include that. No specific landscape plan was included. Trees, berms, and other landscape features could be added. He thought that at this point it would be best just to get an idea of specific amenities. And a splash pad is shown on the northeast corner of the site. And he said any other water feature could be added, or the space could just be left open for another chessboard, perhaps. Most importantly, plan as a draft to be used as a starting point, and a completed site plan will be provided by Mr. Sparks based on input from the council. So we have those available to show. They are available on stillwater.org on the website. And if, are we up? And see if that provides a larger picture. As you can see, this would be the corner of 8th and Husband, and it shows a splash pad here where you see the cursor. That again can be changed. Restrooms over here, close, well, halfway between the stage and what's shown as the splash pad. A small park area in this location. This would be a hospitality pad site. 2 locations here with pavilions for farmers market and food trucks. And in the corner of 9th and Duncan would be an additional pad site or food truck space or the small container space that we talked about earlier in relation to this, where containers are used for retail space. And then the stage up here at 8th and Husband. He said this looks crowded, but in reality, that there is significant space left for people to congregate. And if you look at the other drawings, you can see he indicated that he had blended purposely, and that he's willing to change it any manner. He had blended some more modern architectural features while trying to preserve with the barn-like structures that were included for a multitude of purposes, farmers market, any kind of gathering where you needed to be out of the weather, food trucks, those kinds of things, garage sales, other kinds of gatherings, and could be used by people during times when it's not booked for something else, to sit and have lunch or to watch the kids play or to have a beverage from the retail space or whatever. Again, a fairly simple stage here, the restrooms here, again a park area here with a shade feature here, and what is shown as a splash pad here. And again, he said this can be changed in any manner that you'd like. And I'll run through the rest of these pretty quickly. These are just from different areas. Just different views. So while I'm running through these questions.
Councilors? I have a question. So you talked about where containers could be used, but we could probably put, if we wanted to do the container idea, they could go just about anywhere, couldn't they?
They could, and particularly if you expanded this to include closing of Duncan Street, there could be a whole lot of those placed in that area if you wanted to continue with the container idea. It's a plan that will allow you to move things around and as you see fit.
Okay. Other questions?
I would just like some clarification. When we started this a couple of, whatever, this part, I thought that this was to help us do Phase 1, which was just bury the utilities, get the grass even, and so this conceptual piece was just to give you an idea where to locate utilities. Not to necessarily agree on this arrangement.
Okay, I think that plan
And
was-
actually, I do want to go back. Thank you very much to Mr. Sparks for doing this, offering to do this. This was really a generous offer.
A generous offer of his talent and also his time. So
Right.
We
Absolutely.
honestly appreciate.
Yeah, I should have said that
Yes,
first.
I should have.
But I wanted to clarify what we had agreed that this would be a phased project, and the first phase was just get it cleaned up, bury the utilities, and then Mr. Blankenship pointed out that we can't do that until we have some sense of where water and electricity needs to be. I really hate to commit to any design on top of the ground.
On top of the ground?
Uh-huh.
And then again, so if that's the case, Mr. Blankenship's assessment continues to be correct until we know there would be some wasted effort and wasted dollars without being able to specifically locate certain amenities or closely. I don't mean to the exact inch. Certainly with the restrooms you would because of kind of plumbing that you need, but in terms of being able to get close with hookups for food trucks and that kind of thing, yes, as long as we know the general area. But I think that the plan kind of changed when this offer was made in an effort to determine specific location of those amenities, or what amenities might even be there.
Well, and the way that I viewed it is that definitely it helps to have that conceptual, because you're right, to do all that stuff underground, you're going to have to know, does it make sense to put the stage there? Does it make sense to put, you have to have a layout and a plan that makes sense. So I get that, and I'm kind of with the vice mayor. This is kind of the phase one. If we can kind of think conceptually about where things specifically could go, like the stage or a food truck area or hospitality, and so we know where things need to go specifically. We're not committing that it has to look exactly like the plan that's presented, but we definitely need to know at least where things are going to be located and have a general consensus on how we want that laid out in order to do the infrastructure that's needed to support that. We need to move forward on that.
Yeah, there would be a significant difference in this plan if you decided, if the council decided that it would be wise to close Duncan Street and include that area in the overall plan, because that would move the stage back closer to could move the stage back closer to the community center, and it expands the footprint and allows you more room to install items for electric for food trucks, water for food trucks. Because frankly, Friday night was kind of annoying I was down there pretty early, and all that noise is
Yeah.
pretty annoying.
Has city
Or
staff
agree
had
on
an
it.
opportunity to look at this and kind of figure out if what was designed makes sense, or did Mr. Sparks work with city staff so that as we kind of figure out next steps, does it make sense the way it's laid out, and is it feasible? And
part of the hope is that we could install some electric and water in specific locations where future amenities would be, and that if we had some firmer idea of what it might look like, we have a volunteer that's willing to cost that. I know that there's some individuals that think that they can raise some significant money towards these amenities, and before that kind of effort could take place, we're going to need a little more specific plan.
And I think the layout's great. I mean, I think the
Yeah.
layout makes sense. That's what we're looking at. It's just committing to that. It has to look exactly like that. May not be.
Right. Well, I mean, the next step in this, at least to me, would be to decide what we're going to do with Duncan Street. Because Duncan Street
think
kind of
that's-
is, everything kind of hinges on that. So are we going to keep Duncan Street, or are we going to close Duncan Street, and then start reworking our plan based on that? Because looking at this is actually, I actually really like this concept, but one word that came to mind was crowded. And you had said it earlier, Norman, it's kind of everything mashed together. And if Duncan Street is closed and that's on the table, then you can kind of expand everything there to the west. So to me, the next step would be to, what are we going to do with Duncan?
Actually, I'm going to just go a totally different direction. I'm not crazy about this at all. And it looks like it's I'm really struggling and frustrated with myself because it's everything we said we wanted, kind of. There's no wow, though. That was the one thing we agreed on, was it 10 years ago when we talked about this? That we wanted this to be wow. And first of all, it's so frustrating to be unable to talk about this anyplace except here. I mean, I can't believe that the five of us haven't been on the property and walked around and looked at it together and been able to talk about it and, what does the space look like? It's a huge space. And even though this on paper looks crowded, I bet when you get out there, it's really spread out. And there's no real sense of intimacy anyplace, to me. And we don't know how to design things. Mr. Sparks does know how to design things. I think if we were able to talk to him more, and he could hear more conversation, that we might be able to come to something. But sitting up here, the five of us, do we really know what we're doing?
On this or anything else?
We know
Is that a
absolutely
rhetorical
what we're
question?
doing on other things.
yes.
This one,
And I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you on basically that whole statement about this is trying to come up with design elements for this block is outside of the council's expertise and really outside of the council's charge as the elected officials for the city. I think what we've talked about before, Pat, up here, Councilor Dullington.
whatever.
Our job is policy. Our job is, for something like this, to me, our job is to say, I think this does look great. I think there is a wow factor here. I agree with Ms. Ross that the splash pad's probably not the best thing to put there, that I'd like to see something else. I agree with the letter that was read from Mr. Tubner that I'd like to see it a little bit more modern design and some other things here. But generally, this, I think, would be fantastic if we had something like this downtown. And I would love to see this happen. I'd love to see it include Duncan Street, So what I think we should do as a council at this point with this design is say, from a policy perspective, we want to move forward trying to get something like this done. We're not the ones to do that. I think I would like to at least explore the possibility of something like forming an actual community committee.
Absolutely.
Made up of people who have expressed an interest in this, business owners in the area, local design or architecture folks, the art museum director that Mr. Tubner suggested, a small committee of people who are particularly involved and who may be involved in funding something like this, because, again, none of this is happening without significant public, private funding, right? This is not something the city's got money to pay for anytime soon. If this is going to happen, it's going to be because people in the community want it to happen and are going to be involved and are going to not only be involved in planning, but also be involved in paying for it from a private perspective. And I think we need to form a steering committee of some kind to say, this is what we policy as a committee, as a council, we want to see something that looks something like this, close to this with the features, that sort of thing. This layout looks great, but it's going to change. And charge them with the responsibility of moving forward with what's it really going to look like? How are we going to pay for it? What's the phase?
What are the phases?
Phase is going to look like? And let them do the work that we're not able to do or not qualified to do in a lot of ways, and make this actually happen.
Tonight, should we discuss Duncan Street, and if we want to go ahead and close that? Because I don't see how we move forward if we don't know if we're closing or keeping open Duncan Street.
Well, and it helps give a parameter if we put a steering committee together so they have the pieces they need to move forward.
They can't plan unless they know what we're willing to open or close.
I don't see why that can't be part of their discussion. I mean, we say, there's an option of closing Duncan Street or leaving it open or putting temporary removable bollards up.
Yep.
You guys decide what needs to be done.
So,
Yeah, I agree with that. The plan being, produce something like this. If you feel like closing Duncan is the best thing to do, pursue that as well. If not, that's fine too. I think we can say we're open to the idea of closing Duncan if that's what's in best interest of making this happen, and doing it right. But I don't know that we have to say we're definitely going to close it or not.
So is there going to be, so if we move forward with this idea, is there going to be a timeline? I mean, will this committee represent to the council? Do we say, by, October 1st, we want to hear
2025 or so?
2025,
Yeah.
right.
We've sure taken our time.
But I think that's an important thing to get a timeline on the table because
I agree.
Otherwise,
I'm-
it feels like
yeah.
we're just kind of passing the buck.
well-
I don't want.
we can't
Feel
just
that way.
keep stalling.
Right.
We have to
No,
have
but
a
This
I
is
also
not
wanna say-
stalling. This is not stalling.
We haven't done this right
Well-
from the beginning.
Right.
We
Well,
haven't.
And we also have some other studies that we're working on that might coincide with what we're doing here. And so rushing into, not that we've rushed into this, but.
We haven't rushed into anything.
I
But I
don't
think
think
that
anybody
yes.
would charge us with that.
No. And maybe it's not stalling, but we need to keep moving forward. And I liked the design, and I appreciate what Mr. Sparks did, and I would say go today, but it seems like that's not where we are. So I like what Mr. Tubner said by proxy. And we could keep hearing from experts and keep seeing different designs and change our mind many, many times. So I just hope that we will set a timeline for what we want the committee, we want the committee to come back to us if we're going to form a committee.
Might I suggest then that we advertise for, does the council want to specifically pick the people that are involved? Do you want people to express interest?
People to express interest.
Okay, and because we are not experts either, it would be nice if we could combine some of the things that have been suggested by the group from the community center as well into that effort. We've been given preliminary information that a well field would not hinder anything else that might happen there because of the depth of it by Mr. Sparks. That's been included in a lot of different similar kind of properties around the country. But it would be nice to have them get together and decide those things.
That was another question I had. It was 4 feet?
4 feet deep. Mhm.
That would not hinder future development?
No.
Oh.
Is there,
Well, that's assuming that the amenities are similar to what you see here. If you were going to put up a high-rise building, then yes, it could. I mean, because the piers and things that would be involved in that would be significant.
I really like the idea of a committee. Can we discuss how large, who, if it's a volunteer or appointed, or what
I think
types of people should be involved?
given the agenda item, I think what we can do is ask staff to present us with an idea next meeting of what that committee could look like, and then we can finalize. I assume we need a more specific agenda item that says we're going to do that before we can actually do it. So can we just, at this point, Mayor Noble ask staff to present us next week an outline of what that committee could look like, and then we can talk about how we're going to staff it.
you heard him. Is that,
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
okay, thank you. Moves us to ordinances. First reading, Mr. Dorman.
Ordinance number 3372, an ordinance rezoning tracts of land addressed as 1411 West 7th Avenue, 1404 to 1424 West 8th Avenue, 712 to 720 South Stanley Street, and 707 to 715 South Gray Street from O Office and RSS Residential Small Lot Single Family to P Public District.
Discussion.
Motion to advance the second reading?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to advance ordinance number 3372 to second reading. Please vote. Everybody vote with the vote of 4-1. The motion advances to second reading. On second reading, Mr. Dorman.
Ordinance number 3368, an ordinance closing a permanent easement and right-of-way located on property addressed as 1220 West 12th Avenue.
Discussion.
Motion to approve.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 3368. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, the ordinance is adopted. Item B, Mr. Dorman.
Ordinance number 3369, an ordinance rezoning a tract of land located at 702 South Jardo Road from RMH Mobile Home Manufactured Home District to RTM Residential Two-Family and Multifamily District.
Discussion.
Motion to adopt?
Second?
We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 3369. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, the ordinance is adopted. Item C, Mr. Dorman.
Ordinance number 3370, an ordinance rezoning a tract of land located at 1121 West 4th Avenue from RTM Residential Two-Family and Multifamily District to RMI Residential Multifamily Intermediate District.
Discussion.
Motion to adopt?
We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance number 3370. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, motion is adopted. Item D, Mr. Dorman.
Ordinance number 3371, an ordinance rezoning a tract of land located at 823 West 11th Avenue from RSS Small Lot Single Family Residential District to O Office District.
Discussion.
Motion to adopt?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, the motion is adopted. That brings us to reports from officers and boards. City Attorney,
Nothing to report tonight, ma'am.
City Manager.
Yes, ma'am, I have a couple of items. One, we currently have 2 vacancies on the Planning Commission. We're requesting anyone that might be interested for applications.
And they can do that by...
They can do that online. They can print an item and do it online. Item 2, beginning July 1st, changes to the residential curbside recycling program will begin. including random cart checks, rate checks, and the types of recyclables accepted. You recall there was a report done, and during that report, we determined that during our recycling program's audit, it showed more than 40% of the items residents were putting into recycle carts were actually trash. That amount of rejected items influences our trash and recycling rates, and you can learn more about the program changes on the city's website.
Thank you. Counselors, news.
I do have something. Crazy Days is back, July 19th through the 22nd. And not only, there are a lot of benefits to this, not only does the citywide event provide a positive economic impact, but it also boasts 4 days of retail sales that help customers find fabulous deals. Live music will be performed in downtown Stillwater each day from July 19th through the 22nd, and you can expect sidewalk sales and special offers at most shops. And fabulous weather. Guaranteed by downtown Stillwater.
Counselor Zanotti?
I do. Our emergency management team is committed to the safety and well-being of Stillwater residents and visitors during severe weather. On the city's website and social media this past week, we released a severe weather document outlining our Stillwater First philosophy and how we communicate during emergencies, and it was very good. I encourage you guys to go online and look at it. We encourage you to view this information and share it so we know what to do.
Thank you. Counselor Joyce?
We are nearing the 1-year mark of commercial flight service at Stillwater Regional Airport, and reports of passenger per month has continually grown, which is a testament to the community's support of this service. Last month was our highest percentage of seats filled since the service started, and the projections through August show continued success. So, fly Stillwater.
Counselor Whitley?
And finally, a big thank you goes out to Chickasaw Telecommunications Services, who will serve as the title contributor to our annual Boomer Blast fireworks show. This year's show will actually take place on July 4th at Boomer Lake, so 2 weeks from tomorrow. Fireworks begin at dusk, but come out early to enjoy the food truck selections, and there'll be inflatables for kids. There's playgrounds out there, so it's a good time all around.
It's a great event for Stillwater. Okay, that brings us to item number 12, appointments, and we have one reappointment of Linda, is it Berkey? Burks. Okay, sorry. Linda Burks to the Library Trust, and do we have a motion to reappoint her?
Motion to reappoint.
You made.
I made the motion, yes, I
Yeah.
did. Yes.
Second.
Okay.
I already voted.
Please vote.
You're on top of the game.
I didn't mean to vote no. That's not my vote. My vote is yes. Punched the wrong button. I vote yes. Okay, I would like.
Technical glitch.
Do we have to make a motion? Or no? Okay. There we go. With a vote of 5-0, Linda Burks is reappointed to the Library Trust. And with that, do we have a motion and a second to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, we are adjourned from City Council, and we will move straight to Stillwater Utilities Authority. I call the meeting to order. That brings us to consent docket. Trustees, does anyone wish to remove an item or clarify an item, or is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the consent docket.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, the consent docket is approved. That takes us to item 5, reports from officers and boards. General Counsel,
Nothing to report tonight, ma'am.
General Manager,
Nothing to report, ma'am.
trustees.
No, ma'am.
No.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Please vote. With the vote of 5-0, Stillwater Utilities Authority is adjourned. That brings us to Stillwater Economic Development Authority. I call the meeting to order. Trustees, does anyone wish to remove an item or clarify or approve the consent docket? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the consent docket?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, consent docket is approved. That brings us to reports from officers and boards. General Counsel,
No report, ma'am.
General Manager,
No items, ma'am.
Trustees.
No, thank you.
Do we have a motion and a second?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Please vote. And that concludes the Stillwater City Council, Stillwater Economic Development Authority meeting. Thank you for being here.